Good morning, guys. Good morning. So today we will have the final lecture for midterm 2. Okay, and before we get started, I just have a couple of announcements. So as you guys know, next week is the midterm 2 week, and we have actually 2 parts for the midterm 2. Initially, I was gonna have the part 1, which is the programming part, all done together of all of you. But because of the capacity of the computer room, so we have to break it down to 2 groups. So initially, I was thinking it would be awesome if we can have time just the same time, 6:30 to almost 8. But because at the time, the computer room has a class, so we can do before them and after them. So I think some of you have sent me email about the conflict exam before. Now maybe this will have no conflict then. So there are 2 time slots. You guys can sign up based on your availability. I will show you later the form you can send to me so I can arrange who's going to take which time. So we have 2 groups. The first group will be 5 to 6 p.m. and the second group will be late 8 to 9 p.m. Okay, so you guys can decide whatever time that works for you. Overall, I think the test will only take you like 15 minutes, so we won't take up the whole an hour. All right? And that will be in 218, so that's the Linux computer room. Okay, so that we can do it there. And for those of you, I think the outside students, like Jason, you don't have the CSE account, but at the day, me and Tia can log in for you. So you can just work on our account. Same thing, okay? And the good thing of using the Linux room is we don't have to do the VPN all over again. You just get on the machine, log in yourself, and then you're ready to go to answer the questions. Okay, that's for that. And as we talked about before, part 2 will be Friday in class. Okay, so just remember, Monday we'll be turning in the homework for and review session, and Tuesday evening will be the class. And I'll show you this form to sign up later, so you can pick the time. If both works for you, just tell me both works for you. And Wednesday no class, Friday midterm part 2 for the writing in class. Okay. So I put up a form on Angel. I will send out an email later after class again as well. So on Angel, under the exam folder, we have this midterm 2 part 1 time sign up. If you go in, you just basically have this Google form and just tell me what time works for you. Okay, just check it, and then I'll arrange it and announce it as soon as possible. Okay, so maybe it would be nice if you guys can do it today, so we can know it earlier as well. The next thing will be, so I put up the scripts for scraping data. Maybe you guys won't be interested at this point because it will be for the project, but you guys can take a look, put it in the lab, so it will be sample code for scraping data from the web. Okay, exact same example we worked on for scraping the Thanksgiving decoration stuff. And then quite a few of you have talked to me about homework 4. So if you have started, you will notice that a lot of the questions in question 4, a lot of the, I said, requirements that I gave you actually will give you no result. Okay, so there are actually no restaurant that fit such requirement. Okay, so then you can just answer, unfortunately, there's no restaurant. But the reason of that was because actually at the very beginning I have a bigger data set and I imported to my own database. And for some reason, the data set I gave you guys got truncated a little bit. So a lot of the Pittsburgh part got missing. But that's all right. You can just, as long as your query is correct, okay, then you got full points. So I think some of them will have answers, some of them will not. Okay, I think a lot of them actually don't because I chose a lot of them from Pittsburgh. And one of them, some people have some doubts. I think that's one of them in Pittsburgh. Okay, the Shady Side of Pittsburgh. So if you don't know, Shady Side is a neighborhood in Pittsburgh. So when you work on the question, you can just find one of the attributes, city being Pittsburgh, okay, and the neighborhood being Shady Side. Just in case you don't know that. Okay? So today we will finish up chapter 7, and it will be more of a laid-back class, so we will just kind of work on different things like we can write HTML together, and then we will import some JavaScript, and we will try out different CSS. Okay, so it's very simple. I think a lot of you guys already have the knowledge of it, but just in case you haven't started that for your project. Okay, and that's kind of the main topics for the rest of chapter 7 anyway. Okay, and also before we finish the lecture for today, I have a quiz for you. Okay, that's the quiz 6. Okay, quiz 6, and it will be on DTD. So if you remember the document type definition that we talked about last time for XML. So it's really simple, really similar example. So you can just, I'll give you a DTD, and then you just check whether the example given is following the DTD. That's all. Okay, DTD stands for document type definition, so if you don't remember. That's that. All right, I think I announced everything I should announce. Okay, and now I'll quickly go through them again before we finish the class. All right, so let's get started for today's class. Give me 1 second. All right, so today we are lecture 30. So last time, if you remember, at the end of the lecture, we talked about, in the end, right now, the database internet applications mostly will be in 3 tiers. And for the 3 tiers, we have presentation tier, the middle tier, and database management tier. Okay? So as we talked about last time, actually, the very bottom database management tier is all we have learned about so far, like up until chapter 5 for the SQL queries. So today, we will just kind of brush through presentation tier and middle tier. Okay, mostly put on presentation tier. The reason being, it's interesting to find that actually the technology in presentation tier have moved on so slowly. However, the middle tier have changed so drastically throughout the past decade. So I think we will mostly focus on presentation tier because the things are just more stable at the moment. For middle tier, I'll show you later. If you look at the textbook, because it's published 2002, as you can imagine, 13 years ago, what they were using for the middle tier is actually totally different right now. If you have heard of CGI, no one is really using it right now. Okay, that's what I used when it was like primary school. Okay, really long time ago when people used like guest book, discussion forum, all those type of things. So we will put more focus on presentation tier, and it will be really easy today. We'll just work on some really simple toy examples. Okay. So a bit of overview of the presentation tier. So we say the presentation tier has the following functionalities. First of all, it's the primary interface to the user. So all the web design happens here. Okay. And it adapts to different display devices, like we said last time. For example, for the same website, it might be able to adapt to PC, to your tablet, and to your phone, or to your watch. All right. So mostly the functionalities happen on presentation tier is not that sophisticated, not that complicated. The things happen there might be just some field checking. For example, you fill out a form on the web page, and it will check whether the information you put in is correct. Other than that, not much is solely handled by presentation tier, okay, other than how it looks and what is being displayed. So a couple of technologies that are being used for presentation tier. For example, if you want to pass data to the middle tier, from the front end, you want the user to input something and then pass to the middle tier, then we use HTML forms. Just simple forms. Then user can type in the information, and then that will be passed to the middle tier. Okay? For example, login form, registration form, or maybe in your project you have an administrator that is being able to enter a new product. All these are just done by simple forms, and I think a lot of you have already done that. Okay? And the second one are just simple functionality at the presentation tier, in the sense that it's a Java-based scripting language that can be used for lightweight computation in the client tier. So as you can imagine, if it's Java-based and it's a script, then it's JavaScript. Okay, just JavaScript that we will try today. We'll have some kind of funny example, but you can see what JavaScript can do. The last technology that we will cover today is very simple. CSS is one of them. So it takes care of how things look like. For example, formatting, the coloring, how things are being located, being positioned on the web page. So it's just style sheets. So style sheet, I think the dominant one will be CSS. If you remember, it's cascading what? Cascading something sheet. What is it? It has, I have it at one of the pages. Oh, it's just cascading style sheet, yeah. Okay, I was thinking CSS, no, CSS, all right. Cascading style sheet, right. So that's for the dominant way of displaying different formats. And we actually have other technology, but I looked it up because I feel like it's very unfamiliar, and I looked it up. So even though the textbook also mentioned XSL, it's not really being used right now. Okay, so at the beginning, people have XSL, but now it goes back to CSS. So let's talk through each of them one by one. The first one is HTML forms. So we will also, I'll do some coding on right here today, but you don't have to write down anything. I just want you to kind of see how things change. So you won't be tested on that, just get a sense of how things are happening, then that's fine. Okay. So for HTML forms, the common way of passing data from the client to the middle tier. Okay. So when you think of HTML forms, even though you would think of it from the user input all the way to the back end, but actually it doesn't get right to the database. Okay, so we have the 3-tier, it gets to middle tier. So how the middle tier wants to access the database is taken care of by the middle tier. So the form is only doing from the client to the middle tier. So I think quite a few teams have already done the functionality where users can input stuff, okay? But a lot of teams haven't as well. So I will just show you how you can do super simple forms in HTML. So here we have this formula kind of for putting form in HTML. So you always start from a form tag, and you will put in some attributes and finish the form. And inside you will put in whatever fields you want the user to put in. And here in the form we have different variables. For example, the first is action. You can say, for this form I want which JavaScript file to take care of it, okay? So that's a JSP file. And then for method, as we said a few lectures ago, if it's get, it's more like a login form. And if it's a post method, it's like the user put in something and it was sent to the owner's email. Okay, so that's post, a bit different. And you can also name the form. That's just for identifying what form this is. So if before we get our hands on just creating a super simple form, let's see what are the options we can have for creating forms. For example, here we have input. Input is the most simple one, just a text field, okay, this long rectangular one, okay. And also, I think input, if you try to use different types, you can also change it to a radio button, okay, different kind of things. And we also have select, that will be the drop-down list. And text area are just kind of like if you have any comments, that's like the bigger text box, okay, and you can specify how big you want it to be, all right? Let me see. Okay, let's just try it out. You can see how things look like. So I think last time I asked, like, a lot of you have already written HTML yourself before. Right? Okay. So let's just pretend you've never done it before. Okay, so as we talked about last time, or last 2 lectures, in HTML, we always start with an HTML tag, right? And we also finish with another HTML tag. You don't have to write down anything today. Okay, I'll just show you how it looks like. In the HTML, we have different parts. The first part is the head part, and then we have the body part. So that's for head. And head has all the information, for example, the title of the page, or you can have the last, or you can link different kind of style sheet or external files in head. And we have body. Body is the one taking care of what contents we have. Okay, so far so good. So since we want the form to be rendered on the web page, actually it will appear in the body section. Okay, so as we said earlier, the form will start with a form tag and finish with another form tag. Okay, let's say we want to give this web page a heading. Then what you can do is actually, if you remember, H1 means heading 1. So we can just say, today we want to do a registration form, maybe. Okay. So far it's super simple. Okay, we just started out an HTML file and we save it as HTML. And we say we have head part, we have body part, and for this heading in the web page, we just call it the registration form. Okay. And now because we want to create a form, as we saw earlier, we have different attributes that we should put in, right? So for example, we say for the action in this form, we just assume later on we will have a JSP file taking care of it. But today actually nothing will really happen. But we just say there is this imaginary JavaScript that will take care for taking the information to the middle tier, okay? But today we won't work on that part yet. And maybe what we want to do today, instead of doing get, we want to do post because we are registering a user. Okay, so for the method we do post. And if we want to give name to this form, we can say, just make it a sign up form. Okay, so for this, this form we will create later. We give it a name. Okay, whatever you want to name it, doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's first say if we want to have the user type in the username, okay, if we directly put in the text, it will just be plain text in the HTML. And if we say in here we want to have, for example, those rectangular thin box you see all the time on the forms. Okay, so I want to have an input form that has the text type. Okay, and then here we just name it whatever, like username. And as you can see, in HTML, the form is interesting in the sense that only input doesn't have an and tag. So for input, it's just a standalone tag. Okay, for some reason. They designed it that way. Okay, and maybe you want to pass a password field. If you don't want them to line up all in the same line, you can recall in HTML, if we do the /br tag, that's for new line. Do you guys know that? Okay. Okay. So for /br, that's for new line. All right. And say now, after that, we want to have a password. Okay. You can also put in input, and this time for the type, you can actually put password. So that's how those text boxes are being achieved. Whenever you type in the password, it doesn't show the password. Okay, so the name of this field, you can just name it password as well. Okay, so now you can imagine, now we do this, so what you can see later, other than the heading 1, you will see a username in the text box for putting your username, and password, and a text box for putting password. And when you type in, the password won't show the password when you type in, it will just be those dots, okay, or those stars. So this is what we can do. Okay, just say, let's say this is the most simple form we want to do. And if we want to submit the form, we do another input, but we change the type to submit. So actually, instead of being a text field, this time it will give you like a button. Okay, so this is the submit button. So you can say for the value is actually the label that will show on the button. So you can say OK, or submit, or go, anything like that. Okay, and also we give this button a name. Let me put, that's it. So now you can imagine other than two fields, we have a button. So we can go to open it up and see how it looks like. Okay, so that's the form we just created. All right, super simple, right? We have this heading 1, and we also created 2 fields. Okay, and you can try if we type in, it's not going to show anything. Okay, but so far, because we actually are not linked in to any actual action, so that if you submit anything, it's not going to have anything to do. Nothing's going to happen. Okay, but that's just how we can achieve to make things look like what we want. Okay. Do you guys want to see a bit more of other kind of input fields, or this is good enough? I think that's good enough, right? You guys can try out maybe radio button or any other type of thing, or like drop down. Just try out different kind of tags. Then we can have different input fields for the form. Let me see. So that's for the HTML part. All right, so let's move on. Now we want to add a tiny bit of functionality to this form, let's say. For example, now, even if the user don't type in anything and it's submit, it will still go through. But maybe you want to say, no, at least you have to fill in the username, okay? So this can actually be achieved by using JavaScript, okay? So before we get into that, let's quickly talk about what JavaScript is in terms of putting in HTML. So the goal of it is to add a bit more functionality to the presentation tier. As I said before, presentation tier doesn't do much other than displaying and rendering things. So JavaScript can help you just a little bit more. Some sample applications for JavaScript. For example, it can detect the browser. Maybe different browsers are being compatible with different functionalities and you want to detect it first. And the second one would be form validation, which we will try later. For example, if the user is missing some field, then you should pop out maybe a dialog saying, hey, you should fill it out before you go to the next step. Okay? And the third one would be browser control. For example, you can say you want to open new windows, close existing windows, or a lot of times you will have like click to the previous page, and then you will go back, right? Doesn't matter what your previous page is. So usually the JavaScript can be embedded directly to the HTML with script tag, okay, the start tag and the end tag. Or a lot of times you can just write a completely separate script and then link to it externally. Okay, so what we will try later, we can just embed it in there. Okay, let me see. So if you embed it in there, you can specify what the language is, but if you don't do it, by default it's just JavaScript, because that's the common one. Yeah, and also if you want, you can also, let me see. Oh, that's how you can link it outside. So if you have an external file, you can link it to the outside. If you don't want, or if your JavaScript is really short, you can just directly input it, embed it in the web page. Okay, so let's see what we can do to directly embed it in. Okay. So normally the practice for putting script or personal preference, I just put it at the very end of the body section. So as we said earlier, you just start a script tag and then finish the script tag, okay? And then you put in whatever functionality you want to have inside here. So say today we want to have a functionality to test whether the username is filled out, okay? If it's not filled out, then we want to remind the user, hey, here is empty. Just pop out a dialog and tell the user to fill it out. Okay, so right here, as you can recall, I said JavaScript is a Java-based language. So what you will see inside here is just really similar to what you would do for Java. So we will say we want to declare a function. Maybe we just say we want to test whether name is empty. Okay, and for this one, we don't have to give it any parameter because it's directly linking to the form within the same HTML code. Okay, so what you can do is you can say, I want to check the variable x. What is x? I want it to directly be the username right here. So what you can do is you can say, I want to have the x which is within this document and in the forms, which form it is, which is in the sign up form. Okay. Right here, I think it's not so intuitive, but that's the way you can trace it to the variable you want. And in the sign-up form, the one I want to check will be the username, okay? So that one, all of them are referred by the name we just put earlier, okay? sign up form in user. And you can say, what I'm interested in is the username's value. I don't care about the type, I don't care about other stuff. I care about the value. So the value will be what the user typed in, okay? So what happens after we get the value of the username? You can say, so today, if the username is empty, or if it's null, okay, then we want to pop out like a dialog saying, please enter username, okay, or whatever you want to type in. Not alter, alert. Okay, if you put alert, that will give you a pop-out dialog. Okay, and because this is the wrong situation, you want to return false. And if this doesn't happen, then we can just return true. Okay, like so. So that's it for the script part. You can see that we just defined a function, and then we tell the function what it wants to check. So the whole thing achieves some kind of field validity check. Okay? So this is really intuitive, but now don't forget you actually want to link it back to the form, otherwise nothing will happen. It will just be a standalone script there, and the form will not know it's actually doing something for the form itself. So what you can do is, other than these attributes, you can put, say, when I submit the form, okay, you can say onSubmit, then I want to return this function. Okay. So this is a bit tricky, but you say, I want to return this function, so that's what we declare right there, and it will help you to check the form. Okay. So now the form gets a bit more complicated. At least we have something going on, other than just the field and nothing's happening. Okay, so we can save that. Refresh it again. So now, if we don't put anything in the username, and you put submit, then it will just pop out a dialog. Okay, so that's the simplest validity check you can do. So that's for JavaScript. Super easy. And let me see. So now we achieve a tiny bit of functionality. Let's take a look at what we can do if we want to change up the style a little bit. Okay. So here's another example you can just look through. I'll get to the style sheet. So on slide 8, let's talk about the style sheet. So in general for the style sheets, the idea is that we want to separate the display from the contents. Yeah?
So is it better to do like input validation with like JavaScript at the browser level, or is it better to do it on your backend? Like security-wise?
I think security-wise, how so?
Well, I don't know. I'm not really. I don't know exactly. Like there's a lot of like security framework, like I don't know, cross-site scripting and stuff like that. Is it better to have it done like I don't know? I don't know if you know.
I think in the sense that some check, if you can do it in the browser level, it's a lot faster instead of accessing to database. And a lot of check actually does not require you to go to database. Other than, for example, if the username is taken, then you can't do it on the browser level, right? You actually have to go to the database and see. So I think it depends on what functionality you want to achieve. But if we only do on JavaScript level, a lot of function can be done faster, in a sense. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about style sheet. So the idea for style sheet is we want to separate display from content and adapt display to different presentation formats. So you can imagine sometimes you want to just design the website in one way and specifying the contents to display already, but you want to have other source for determining how it should look like. So you can notice sometimes, this happens rarely, but sometimes if you go to Facebook and open it up, it will look all kind of messed up in the sense that you only see the contents, but all the colorings are gone. Okay, that happens really rarely, but it's happened to me sometimes. So maybe that's the time, maybe their CSS is temporarily not available, it didn't link it well. So you can see all of the contents, but it's not displayed in a pretty way. Okay, so that's when the CSS is missing, but the contents are all there. Okay, so in terms of style sheets, there are two aspects. The first aspect is we can do document transformation. So document transformation, it will help you to decide what parts of the document to display in what order. Most common thing being used for style sheet is the second one, which is document rendering. So it will help you to decide how each part of the document is displayed. For example, earlier we have just plain text in our form, and we have heading in our form. We also have the text field. So actually you can just say, for all of the headings, I want to display this way. For all of the text field, I want to display in another way, okay, which I'll show you later. So why do we want to use style sheet? There are different reasons. The first of it will be we want to reuse the same document for different displays. Okay, like we said before, last time we said actually CSS or other style sheet can help you to achieve on different devices it being rendered differently. Okay, so that's what the style sheet can do. Or another reason will be to tailor display to users' preferences. So sometimes you can trigger some kind of saying the user wants the same web page to display differently. For example, on Angel, you can set different things, right? So that's done by CSS as well. Or the third reason will be to reuse the same document in different contexts. Okay, so there are two major style sheet languages. The first one is the one we will talk about today, cascading style sheet, which is actually CSS, right? So it is for HTML documents. And another one is extensible style sheet language, which we call the XSL. So it will be for the XML documents we talked about last time. But remember earlier I said it's actually slowly going away right now. So if you can think of it, there's this period of time when everything was done in HTML. And then people say, now I want it to be more schema-oriented instead of document-oriented, so they jump into XML to achieve the data hierarchy, right? But nowadays people go back again to JSON for the compression reason or efficiency reason. So now if you look at those source code, again, like we did last time for Amazon, you can't see anything about XML anymore. It still looks like HTML, right? So right now, instead of using XSL to take care of the format, people go back to use CSS. Okay, but when the textbook is written like 13 years ago, they're still talking about, hey, XSL now replace CSS. Okay, but now if you don't go back to look at later, I will also talk about Bootstrap. So a lot of people are using Bootstrap right now. It's actually a combination of HTML and CSS. Okay, so the style sheet we'll talk about will be CSS. We'll focus on CSS. So what is CSS exactly? So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It defines how to display HTML elements, which we will see later. So CSS files contains the style definition. You can put the font you want to use. You can use the font size and the color, all of different things. Or you can even, oh no, that's not in CSS. All right. And for many different HTML documents can refer to the same CSS file. So within the same website, if you all refer to the same CSS file, then everyone has the same style, same thing, okay? And if you want to change it up, change the whole website of the theme, but you want to have the content stay the same, then just change that one CSS file, everyone changes, okay? So CSS is considered as the first step towards separation of the content from presentation. So instead of embedding all the style information in your HTML code, like sometimes we write in Word, you can imagine. Word, you might say, if you don't do this style thing, like the title heading, you might say, I will go manually highlight this line, set it to 14 point, set it to other fonts, so this means heading 1. Okay, then everything is done inline. Okay, you do it so separately, so it's not consistent. If you suddenly want to change the heading style, you have to go back to change it over again. So if you imagine doing it in Word, Microsoft Word, then doing the top ones, choosing the heading, choosing the title, or heading 1, heading 2, those are kind of similar idea of CSS. Okay. So how would the CSS look like? So CSS file is included into an HTML file with the following line. So we can just link it. Later I'll show you, we can use a link tag and link the external CSS file that we write. Okay, so within a CSS file, we have these kind of formula, So you can always start with a selector, and then within the curly braces, you say what is the value of the property. It's like key value pair. So an example here will be, for example, for the body part, I want all of the body parts background color, missing a D. Okay. background color to be yellow. Okay, then it's totally equivalent to doing it in HTML directly. Okay, saying it's the body and then the background color being yellow. Okay, so let's just see what we can do if we want to try it out. So, for example, we can start a new file and we just simply save it as a sample CSS. Okay, whatever you want to name it. And for example, today we want to have the body section in the part being, we can set the background color. Okay, and maybe we can try being fancy today. Let's make it all black. Okay. If you're not familiar with this way of presenting color, it's the hex number for presenting color. Okay. So it's a 16, how do you say? It's from 0 to F. Okay, 0 means 0 and then all the way, when it goes to 9, it goes to A, B, C, D, E, F. So it's not binary. It's the 16, I forgot, hexadecimal, is it? Hexamal number, okay? So that's for representing the color. So if it's all 0, it means black. And maybe we can say, change it up even more drastically. We want the font color to be all white. So if you put all F, that means white. Okay, so 0 is the minimum, is the hex number. F is the maximum, is the hex number. Okay, it's not that important for this class though. Okay, just so you know, it's not a web design class, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so maybe we don't like the default font, so we can say we want to change the font family to maybe, what's it called, Calibri. So that's the one we always use for the slides because I like it. So we'll use it for the web page as well. Okay. So other than that, maybe we want to say for the heading, I also want to change it up. Maybe I want to put the heading to orange. Okay, so you can see we can also put just some regular names for the color. So you can say I want to put it to orange. And maybe other than just putting it on the left side, I can align it to the center. Okay, so this is just to show you, these detailed syntax doesn't matter. Okay, I can just show you how we can just use a uniform style for the whole web page. Okay, so now we design it, then we just need to link it back. Okay, so the way we can link it is right here. As you recall, we will put things in the head part. Okay, so we can just link it in this way. We use a link tag, and we say this one is a style sheet, and the type of it, one kind of text, that's CSS file. And whenever we talk about href in HTML, the attribute is saying which link to point to. Okay. So earlier we created to be sample CSS to not do that. So if you go back, see it, then we change the style. Okay, so basically what we just did was we just specify we want the text to be white and we want the background to be black and we want the heading to be orange. Okay, that's it, and we change the font. So before we move on from CSS, just want to do a tiny bit more thing. So I think JavaScript has been around for a long time, and there was a point in time people are also using, not sure whether you guys have heard of it, I think it's called Java Applet. Have you guys heard of it? Or it's too old. It's like, it kind of go hand in hand with JavaScript, but it shows more of an animation or some more graphical functionality on the web page. But I think it's a really old technology, so it's kind of going away now. But JavaScript still stays. So I just want to show you my first experience with JavaScript when I was like 10 years old or something. So we started learning computer class in primary school, and at the time we were just using, if you have heard of it, there's a software called Front Page. Yeah. Okay. Showing the age now, so that's like the web page editor, okay, you can use. It's terrible, but we still had a lot of fun as kids. So we were trying to use it, and at the time I've been always the computer kid in class. So I was looking online some of the cool stuff you can incorporate into your web page. And I found there's these little animation things on your web page you can do. For example, I don't know why I would think I could do it, but like when I was little, I would just paste things to my source code of the web page, things like that. So I found there like some little raining animation or little clouds flying animation or snow. So let me see. So I found this snow JavaScript yesterday. I was really happy, and I just want to show you guys. So if you take a look, so the main idea is I just want to show you for these JavaScript, they can achieve super simple animation as well. So when you open it up, it might be just way too detailed of what you want to understand. But they will talk a lot about like the speed of the snow, how it's going to fly, or maybe you can do some interaction with the snow. So for your cursor moving around, the snow will change their direction, all these little things. Okay, so you don't have to understand this, but there are so many different functionalities online. You can just directly download it. So for example, I have this snowstorm JavaScript, and I want to try it out on my own web page right here. So you can say, I want to incorporate the script, which is a little snowstorm. Okay. And this is just directly incorporating it into our web page. Okay, so that's the whole reason I changed the background to black. So now we have snow. Okay, so that's it. So you can see, even just simple JavaScript can do this without any image because they're all just little dots. Okay, so you can like change how the snow flies, stuff like that. Okay, that's it. So that's the end of discussion on JavaScript. All right. So you can find out different kinds of little functionalities. Of course, for your project, adding snow is not really useful, but but you can add like more validity check. Okay.
Would it ever be useful adding snow?
Well, it entertained me when I was little, okay. And I was like, I think I was really cool. All right. So that's for JavaScript, and that's all for the presentation tier I will talk about today. Okay. So because this is not a web design class, so I won't put too much emphasis on presentation tier. Oh, before we move on, actually one more thing for the presentation tier is Bootstrap. So I think a lot of you have heard of it. Who has heard of Bootstrap? Quite a lot. Okay, so I think this has been the trend right now, using Bootstrap as your front-end design. So when I first got experience with Bootstrap, I think it looks really fancy. Okay, that's my first impression. It looks really neat, really smooth, and more of a modern way of design. So, but then it got to a point that's being really overused. Whatever tiny web page you go, it's Bootstrap. Like, doesn't matter how much content they have, Bootstrap. Everyone looks like Bootstrap. But I still think it's like the best looking web design template so far. Okay. So Bootstrap actually originally it's developed by people from Twitter. Okay, so it's originally named Twitter Blueprint and developed by Mark and Jacob at Twitter for internal use. So in the beginning, they were not really trying to have other people to use it, other than just Twitter people. They can have it internally, maybe because at the beginning, maybe whenever they display their work progress, display whatever presentation they have, it's too messy. So they decided, okay, within the company, we're going to have one uniform way of displaying the results. So that's why they developed Bootstrap. But then later on, they found out this thing can be really powerful because they designed it in a way that it's really easy to use and really easy to develop other kinds of styles based on that. So they make it open source. So it's an open source collection of tools for creating websites and web applications. So as I said before, it actually it's the Bootstrap. As I said before, now people moved on for XML and go back to JSON along with HTML for displaying data. So Bootstrap, you can think of it as a HTML and CSS-based design. Okay. So it comes with a lot of components already. It comes with typography, forms, buttons, navigation, and other interface components. You might not know, but the course website is using Bootstrap. Okay, so that's one. I chose Bootstrap for the course website style. And you can see this is just another Bootstrap example. So this is the very typical Bootstrap example. Okay. So I think when you go back, you can try to see what are the other Bootstrap example, and we also have a team, the project selling Bootstrap templates. Okay? So if you can go up to see how the general theme looks like. So they have different themes. One of the most common is a lot of people will use Bootstrap to write their GitHub repository wiki, kind of. So they will write their own documentation for the repository. Or another one will be just this kind of really wide looking, and every section is like a whole wide row of content. So that's Bootstrap for now. But I was originally want to demonstrate how to do things in Bootstrap, but it will get too complicated because they have so many components developed by themselves. So I think you can go to take a look if later on you want to change up. If you're not using Bootstrap for your project, you want to change it up, then you can go. It's really easy to learn. Just link it to a CSS file. That's it. Okay? And then you check out the document and see how you can use different components. Okay? Okay, I'll just quickly show you for the website of the course. Snow still? All right. So that's for, this is done in Bootstrap. So this will be the navigation bar we talked about. Okay, and we also have right here, it's all done by Bootstrap. Even though there's, I don't know whether any one of you noticed, there's this flaw in my design. You cannot scroll down on the left side, but I guess you guys can just scroll the right side. All right, so yeah, this is the basic Bootstrap example, but it doesn't look that fancy yet because if you go to a lot of current websites, I think a lot of conference websites or a lot of startup websites, they will look super Bootstrap style, okay? So you can try it out. Okay. That's for Bootstrap. So that's the end of for our presentations here, okay? We kind of put a lot of time in there. Okay, so we actually don't have time for middle tier. Let me see. All right, I had too much fun today. But for middle tier, I think then I will talk about it after the midterm, so it won't be in the midterm. So today we are only until which slide? Until 13. Okay, so everything afterwards, we will have it for the next time. Okay, so midterm 2, I won't test you of these things. Okay. So before you go, I just have this little quiz for you. Okay, you can